messing around out here with this shit. Pilfering through my part stash. Trying to figure out what parts I want to use on this 327 here. I'm building it to be period correct racing engine like you would find in the late 70s. So everything on it needs to be from that era. You don't want to put no modern billet valve covers with fucking flames on them. Shit like that. If you're trying to go for the true old school look. When I was a youth back in the 70s, my dad was pretty big into drag racing, so I found myself at the track a lot. And back then, fucking, a kid could walk around the pits not worrying about getting snatched or something. But you could walk around, check out other people's cars and shit and see what they're running. But as a youth, I remember walking around the pits. It seemed like the baddest fucking cars at the track. You look under the hood and you'd always see some gold Moroso shit like this. More often than not, that was, if you're trying to build late 70s period correct, that's pretty much the go-to there. Because anybody who was anybody back in the day, that's what you run. That's what you'd find on Red Hair Morrison engines, Lee Shepherd. All the bad motherfuckers ran them. So, I figure that's the more appropriate choice, since I am building this to be period correct for the late 70s. And it's going to make over 550 horsepower. Which they did that back then. So it ain't nothing new. It's just some old technology that a lot of young bucks don't know exist. But there's been bad motherfuckers around for a long time. Drag racing it didn't just start last year. Circle track racing and fucking all motorsports shit's been around. These fucking gold Moroso valve covers, these things have gotten crazy expensive. I don't know what the fuck happened, but used to they were relatively cheap. And then all of a sudden somebody thought they were worth their weight in fucking gold, and now, shit, you could buy gold cheaper than you can a mint set of them fucking valve covers. I'm lucky enough, I'm old enough that I remember when they were cheap and you buy them brand fucking new for like $25. So I still have several sets for small block Chevys. Got several sets for big block Chevys. Got one set for Pontiac, which it's going on the Pontiac engine I'm building for my Catalina. It's gonna be old school drag race shit. It's getting the gold Morosos on it also. And you got your Milodon oil pan for a Chevy 2. Just 327 It's an actual L-79 327, but it was in a 55 Chevy gasser back in the day. And the oil pan that was actually ran on it when it was in the fucking gasser is this oil pan right here. It's like a fucking 9-quart Moroso deep sump. That's the pan that was on that 327. I knew the guy that had the 55 Chevy. He died probably 10 years ago. He was a pretty good old boy. But I ended up with his 327 out of his 55. I wish I could have. The car was all disassembled in his building. His wife and kids and shit sold off all his shit when he died, so I ended up buying the engine. But the whole car, it was rolling chassis, still sitting there. I think they wanted $5 grand for it, and fucking thing sold in like one day. Which, fucking 55 Chevy gasser, authentic, built in the late 60s, worth a lot of money this day and age. The old school look. I was there back in them days, so I remember what I saw. Remember the shit my dad had, my uncle, all their buddies, surrounded by gearheads growing up. And I always paid attention to what they were fucking with and what kind of parts they used and shit. I got a few examples of some small block Chevys here. It's not exactly modern looking, but it's a little more modern. It's Vortec heads, and that's a Mercruiser intake on that. But that's actually a stout ass fucking engine. It makes more power than one would believe. It's got a big roller cam and shit in it. It's a functional unit, but I'm gonna make some changes to it. And I got this other set of Vortec heads that are next level shit. Some Brzezinski heads. I'm gonna swap them on here. I got this big fucking Vortec Super Victor intake I'm gonna put on it. But that's a project for another day. But it's got the big 7-quart drag race oil pan on it. Got your gold timing chain cover and shit. Never paint your brass freeze plugs. Leave them gold. It just looks better. There's this old block here. It's to be built. I don't know who the fuck built it. I've had that block for years, but it's 30 over now. It's got main studs and shit, and somebody put a lot of machine work into it decades ago, but he's cleaned up and done right and put back together. But that's the makings of a pretty damn good engine. This Moroso shit, you can't go wrong. These here are more your 80s era. I remember when they hit the scene. They were your state-of-the-art 1980s. Seen them on fucking NASCAR stock cars and shit. Dale Earnhardt used them. This engine's pretty old school looking, but it's also kind of modern. It's not exactly cutting edge yesterday's shit, but that intake's fairly modern. Those heads are fairly modern. I think the block is a fucking 1990 L-98 350 block out of a C-28 or IROC, whatever the fuck they were calling them that year. It's factory roller block. But it's got the overall old school vibe to it. V-groove, old school pulleys and shit. Keep it simple. Just painted it black. Got your gold accents. Moroso solid motor mounts. But this is a little too modern looking for what I'm trying to achieve with this unit. This is going to be a throwback to the 70s. I think them gold Morosos first hit the scene about the mid-70s or so. So them were 1975 292 Fireball crane heads. So that's all era correct. Old Holley Strip Dominator intake from back in the day. I'm going to run with a Mallory Unilight distributor. Those were high-tech shit back in the day. That's a 750 double pumper sitting on it now, but it's just mocked up. Of course, it'll probably gonna put an 830 on it. Duplicate a unit I built years ago, and it had an 830 on it, annular discharge, and it worked real fucking good. There's another small block Chevy. It's not 70s looking. It's more 90s, I guess. These are pro top line heads from the late 90s, early 2000s. And Victor Jr., that particular unit there is about a 1979 Victor Jr. It's an old one. You got your big dart intake on this one. This like 1995. Got the old ass Moroso pan. Got your older 215 Dart Pro 1s. They've had some work done to them. They've been ported and shit. Got, I think, a 208. It's either 205 or a 208 valve. Pretty damn good set of heads. They'll make some good numbers. That's a project for another day. You got your Holley valve covers. Those were 80s. Those were popular, which even back then you didn't see too many of them motherfuckers, but I remember seeing a couple of pair I had some myself, but they wasn't real common even back then. So they're kind of rare valve covers. I always thought they looked pretty damn good. Those straight out of the 80s right there. These small block Chevys, there's many ways to build them. All depending on what you're trying to achieve. A lot of roads to travel. And then got the unit got hooked up over here, functional. It's a mismatch of old and new, but I would say that would probably be your early 2000s era look, except that intake is straight out of the fucking late 70s. Strip Dominator Holley. And the metal Brock air cleaners, they've been around for a long time. Late 70s. Those valve covers, they got popular in the 90s, I believe. Late 80s, early 90s. Paint burning off them fucking headers. Yeah, went back through my 850 double pumper. Put it back on here. It works like a charm. It just dried up on me. Sat for too fucking long. Hollies, you let them sit around for years, and you pretty well count on you're gonna need a kit. Which actually, the fucking thing, the little cork gaskets where the air fuel mixture screws go into the metering blocks, that's where it was getting air at. Fucking change them out and problem solved. But I went ahead and put new needle and seats and all that shit in there, and pulled some floats out of a newer carb, stuck in there just in case it had a sinking float or something. It was acting funny, but I got it figured out. 850 double pumper works real good on a 350 if you got enough ass to use it. I wouldn't recommend it for your 300 horse cruiser, but this motherfucker here makes pretty fair amount of horsepower. So 850 double pumper works quite well on it. Snappy as hell. The 850 double pumper was originally for a L-88 427 big block Chevy. That's what their original purpose was. That's the only engine ever came stock with an 850 double pumper. It was a late 60s L-88. Badass big block. These little small blocks, they can get the fucking job done. You just gotta build them to enhance where they shine. The smaller the engine, the higher you need to rev it to make the power. These old big blocks, you can make a shitload of power at a low RPM. 327, you're gonna need to buzz that sumbitch on up. There's just a few thoughts on some small block Chevys.